Voice over IP and web phone applications, Web 2.0 implications for communications, advertising, and content. So we have a very wide and diverse panel today, so I'm thinking we're going to get a lot of different and interesting perspectives on that very broad topic. My name is Antoinette Goro. I'm from Digital Tech Consulting. We are a market research firm. We focus largely on digital TV content, sizing the worldwide market for subscribers in different regions and what people are watching and buying and doing with their television and the related connections to it. In terms of format, I'm going to go ahead and let all of our panelists tell you a little bit about who they are and their companies and how it relates to our topic. And then we're going to go straight to questions. I have a few questions to start out with, and I hope that the audience will participate a lot and contribute some questions as well. So I'm going to just introduce everybody by name really quickly, and then we'll go through and hear from our panelists. So to my right is Sean Lewis from, is it just VoIP? Is that how you? VoIP Inc. Next to Sean is Gunjan Bao from Action Tech. Then we have Scott Faber from Ingenio, Michael Levitt from Paltalk, and last but not least, Alex Kulichi from AOL Voice Services. We appear to be missing Monty Sharma from Vivox, so maybe he'll join us a little later. So, Sean,
sure.
Why don't we start with you?
My name is Sean Lewis. I am the CTO and COO of VoIP Inc. This is my third foray into what I'll call digital media. In 1997, I wrote the patents for soft switching, which actually brought VoIP to the marketplace and sold that to Level 3. 1999, River Delta was formed, created DOCSIS and cable modems, sold that to Motorola. And in 2001, started a new company, Voice One, which was acquired by VoIP Inc. last year. VoIP Inc. provides termination services, local services to various cable companies, VoIP operators. We also provide technology services, say to Google for their click-to-call. In addition to that, we provide media marketing services. If you take a look at Snakes on a Plane, you have the ability to create a customized voice demonstration that can be sent to a cell phone or a home phone. We do that. So we're in various aspects, but we work directly with other partners or customers. We're actually the wholesale provider underneath, and we actually put the technologies together to make it all work. We're a nationwide carrier across the country as well. So.
Thanks a lot, Sean. Gunjan?
I'm Gunjan Bao. I'm Vice President of Marketing and Product Management at Action Tech Electronics. And we sort of straddle the VoIP world a little bit in our company because we have an existing residential gateway business being sold through DSL providers and fiber to the premises providers. And we have over 3 million gateways deployed in just North America. And we sort of deal with VoIP in the sense of service providers going triple play. Now it's becoming popular to have it quadruple play, using the mobile service as part of that. At the same time, we have a whole product line that's a set of Skype accessories that extend the power of Skype and other VoIP providers to away from the phone to your mobile phone to your cordless phone in the home, and all of that sort of untether you from your PC. And so that gives us a very good view on what's happening in the consumer Web 2.0 pure web-based world of Skype and how Skype is being integrated on the eBay selling process, the commerce and Skype casting and all of that. At the same time, we have a view from the service provider centric how they look at VoIP. So those are the two lines of businesses we operate in.
And I'm Scott Faber. I'm the founder of Ingenio. We've been around for about 7 years. Back in the day, we were called Keen.com, and our newest division is called Ether. We build what we call a voice commerce platform, and it is built upon VoIP, but we've also taken great pains to make sure that it's accessible not just to VoIP clients, but to anyone who has a telephone. So We believe that one way that for VoIP to really go mainstream, it's going to have to be accessible to anyone who has a telephone. So whether it be our pay-per-call product, which is actually something that AOL uses to help monetize its search, or our Ether product, it's accessible to anyone who has a phone on top of our VoIP. All of our products help to monetize communications. We not only connect calls, we bill buyers and pay sellers. Probably the best example of VoIP in combination with Web 2.0 is our Ether product, which I have here. We just take about 30 seconds to take you through it. In a nutshell, with Ether, we empower people to sell what they say. Excuse me. Whatever services you have to say, whether they be computer help or therapy, health, diet, exercise advice, celebrity, whatever services you can speak, we give you all the tools to be able to sell. The main tool we give you is a phone number, so the form 888-MY-ETHER with an extension that's unique to you, and we let you assign a price that people must first pay before they can ring through to your actual phone. We also let you control the times of day that people can call you, and armed with those two controls, suddenly you can mix phone numbers and VoIP with mass media, whether it be blogs or radio stations or printed documents or whatever you'd like. So that's a background on Genio and our newest thing, Ether.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Levitt. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Paltalk. Paltalk is now an 8-year-old company in the voice over IP service space. Basically, we began as the first voice instant messenger. To put it in perspective, we had a product in the instant messaging space prior to Yahoo even had a messenger. So been around the block a few times. Basically, Paltalk launched a integrated voice over IP and presence messenger in '98. Pretty quickly realized that that's a difficult business to prosper in, and by the year 2000 had made it both video focused as well as group focused. So over the next few years, we really started to become a community, made it focused on the business to consumer space, and went ahead and made an architecture that supports very, very large groups of users. So basically, you can have groups of people who are talking about sports, politics, finance, religion. They can come to Paltalk. If they create a chat room, as we call our product Instant Chat, a cousin to instant messaging, they can come through and become the moderator or owner of a room. They can post that and have a series of ratings so that other people can come in and talk with them there. And so basically you can decide who can text, who can type, who can talk with their voice, and who can post their videos, all real time having this conversation. This is really big for day traders. It's great for political discussion groups. As Paltalk's 50-50 US versus international, you can imagine some of the political discussions that go on. It's really big for dating. So rather than go ahead and post a picture and a profile, I can get 150 people all hanging out in a room where they're going to play some music for each other. They're all going to talk and type. And through this real-time interaction, they're really figuring out who they'd like to meet. So we are this underlying technology layer and this portal where people can come together to have discussions. We have some large partners such as XM Satellite Radio. One of their largest shows is the Opie and Anthony Show. They actually use this as a way to talk back to listeners as well as to broadcast their video. As well, we recently launched a messenger along with Real Networks alongside of Big Brother 7 so that you can go through and have a more advanced chat service with that.
Hi, I'm Alex Felici. I'm a VP of Voice Services at AOL. I don't think I need to introduce the company, but it's worth pointing out that we are in the VoIP space, which is something a lot of people aren't aware of. We've been building a number of different consumer voice applications that leverage VoIP technology, as well as providing a platform that companies and individuals can use to extend our applications. So the one I think that's been in the news most recently is we have a free phone service called AIM Phone Line that gives people a free local number, free voicemail, free ability to answer calls when they happen to be online using Instant Messenger or our AOL client, and a number of other cool features, completely free. We don't pitch it as VoIP. We almost don't even pitch it as a phone line. We pitch it as a service that helps solve consumer problems. And somebody brought up dating. You don't want to give your phone number to someone you don't know. You can get a phone number from us, give it out, feel free to talk. If you're buying stuff, you can give the salesman your phone number, feel free to have them call you, and know that they're not going to annoy you by calling your home and sell. We also have an outbound service and a number of other cool services that we're launching or that other people are launching on top of our platform.
Thanks a lot. Well, I think to start out our questions, as I mentioned, my area that I come from is the subscription TV market predominantly. And one of the things that's really become apparent over the last few years is that for service operators, they need to be thinking about their markets in terms of the triple play. That really it's not enough to be a subscription content provider anymore. Really the communications aspects are equally as important in terms of being able to retain market share and gain new subscribers and increase revenues. So in terms of just a starting off point, I'm wondering who are the main players being displaced by these new technologies in terms of telephone companies or, as I mentioned, being a singularly focused content provider is not enough anyway. Who are the current large players that need to face these new challenges, and what is it that they are being faced with in terms of the new technology? I think, Gunjan, why don't we start with you on this?
Yeah, I think the obvious answer is that the traditional ILECs, the local exchange carriers, your local phone company is likely to be displaced. And I think it's the obvious generality that people say, okay, well, fine, they're going to do it. But I think the answer is something deeper than that. It's the business of charging 4 minutes of people talking to each other. That's done. But if you take the VoIP vision as something larger, that it's a product, it's a feature. I mean, if you take example of like an email, that email, nobody has ever charged for sending email, but there's so many business models and so much around the text aspect of internet. If you take voice in the same light, that there is people publishing voice content, if you want to call it, people talking to each other in the context of a commercial transactions like eBay, people leaving voicemails, people selling services like what Scott was talking about, then you look at service providers still are in a tremendously enviable position to monetize all of those services. It's a question of the traditional business of me paying X dollars a month to make a phone call to somebody, or if that person happens to be outside a certain geographical range, then I'm going to pay per minute. I think that aspect of it is going to go away. But in terms of the business, I think service providers still are quite favorably placed if they act quickly, that is.
Do you agree with that, Michael? What's your thoughts?
You know, I do agree with it. I think there are a few other people who are actually displaced. Clearly, I think the long distance carriers are some of the hardest hit. If you look at it, this is simply a lower cost channel as an alternative to many consumers. So when you're looking at, for example, your overseas calls, you're really going to start disproportionately using voice over IP alternatives. Secondarily, there are a lot of taxes. There's clearly a lot of ongoing discussion in terms of how these taxes are levied. But there's local surcharges, there's 911 surcharges, and frankly, we're still figuring out how all that works, whether it's off of an inbound phone number, off of percentages, off of flat fees. But as this space becomes more and more commoditized, you're seeing prices come down dramatically on core voice minute services. And as that happens, the tax base erodes as well. And so you're seeing a couple different parties really impacted there.
I just want to add a comment to that.
Yeah, sure.
Carriers aren't actually being displaced. When you make your phone calls over VoIP today, they're still going through your long distance network. What's happened is people have taken advantage of unregulated business opportunities. VoIP being unregulated, there are niche opportunities to go and collect or have a better chance of doing something. The calls are still being transported across MCI. When you make a phone call to Europe, it's still going across the same phone lines. The only difference there is you're obtaining that service through a non-tariffed means, meaning that MCI didn't file a tariff for the local PSC saying, I'm going to charge you 3 cents per minute. What you did, you were able to bypass that effect, go through somebody else who's buying wholesale from MCI and getting the gains of that. You know, the issue that's going to, voice will never be quote unquote free. I think voice will move from a non-per minute usage type scenario to where it's going to be $9.95 per month for your voice service. You know, because I can buy in such bulk minutes, I can do that. You'll never find a going away, at least not for the next 10 to 15 years. There's too much plant in the ground. There's just too much held on by the LECs and by everybody else that they're not going to let that go. But they are going to bundleize it, and they're going to make it a component of other services to which you can buy. It's just different ways of doing it today. That's really all it is.
Scott, Alex, you both look like you have something to chime in. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, no, I would agree with what's been said. Certainly anyone who delivers long distance, and especially international long distance, is in big trouble. I would extend that to anyone who doesn't continue to innovate, because basically the advent of VoIP means that all the innovation that we've seen on the internet is we're now going to see that kind of innovation in the voice space. And where it's been a sleepy industry for the past 30, 40 years, suddenly all the kind of new ideas and instant new companies are going to arise around voice. And here we see 4 or 5 of them. So if you're sleepy and you could keep doing things the way you used to, one example might be 411. If some of the wireless carriers just keep charging $2 for very boring 411, they're going to be out of business pretty quickly. You're already seeing free 411. You're seeing all the major players get into this. And so that's just one of many examples of anyone who doesn't innovate like an internet startup in the voice space is going to be in trouble.
So I agree that voice isn't necessarily free. It gets paid for somehow. But I think the fact is that voice in the US can actually be free. We've seen the first mashups of free AIM phone line for inbound calls, which is monetized by advertising. And we're turning phone calls into page views. And we've seen that mashed up with Skype Out to do free US and Canada calls. And so you're paying for your broadband connection. Clearly we and Skype and others are working deals with wholesale providers to get minutes at a reasonable rate that can be monetized by advertising. But right now, if you're willing to work a bit, you get free telephony.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. But how many consumers today would actually how many folks here have a VoIP phone line at home? Okay, so you have half the crowd. Now the other half, if you call them, how many people have cell phones? Almost everybody. Now when you call somebody's cell phone and take a look at the rise of wireless communications today, it's the largest growing factor in communications today is wireless. More and more people are taking less of a home service and moving to a wireless type tradition. Until you can bring VoIP to a wireless scenario, and they're doing it today, but it's not going to be mainstream for 2-3 years before you can see it happen, you're still going to have that interchange that needs to take place from a VoIP network to a TDM network. And while you can build all these advanced services and offer all these bundles, there's still legacy world that we have to deal with. That is the overall issue, is that not everybody's going to jump tomorrow and say, okay, great. You can go look at Time Warner. Time Warner is hugely successful in their VoIP initiative. They make Vonage look like a kid. And that's because they're able to bundle the package and they give the service correctly. I mean, that's really what they're able to do. And the more this is going to take 5-7 years for this to really lay out, and it's still at that point, you're still going to have that legacy world, and maybe you'll only pay for that legacy connectivity, you as an AOL, but you'll be able to take care of that cost through other means. So, and it's just going to be a transitional period of time. And today, as you're talking about, you're monetizing it through advertising. Google's doing it through advertising. So today, the means of giving away free phone service is by utilizing advertisers. And so, people will always be looking for the avenue to go and say, okay, how do we get revenue? Because we don't want to go to you and ask you for money. So how do we use this VoIP space and all these other initiatives that are going on to achieve more revenue through, the retailers? And that's really big.
Just really a quick comment. I think this debate whether voice would be free or not is not really valid. I think you're all agreeing that voice would be there and someone would pay. Whether it comes through advertisements or it comes through subscriptions is a different issue. But someone is going to pay for that voice somehow. And secondly, the percentage of the bandwidth that VoIP is consuming in the overall scheme of things in the data world is minuscule. And therefore, from that standpoint, I believe some people may be right in saying that there is a logic in saying that VoIP may be free someday.
Well, I think it's the free. What's going down to zero is the death of distance, That's the piece. You know, you would probably pay, just look at the internet. I mean, the people who provide me my broadband, they are at the back end being charged, they are being metered when they rent the backhaul or whatever. But they have the economies of scale, so they can give me $25 a month, use all you want. That's the model VoIP is going, you know. But I think that the idea of today I'm paying in T tiers, the local calls, long distance and international, that is being collapsed through VoIP. Is the incremental money you can charge for distance is zero. I think that's safe to say. That's going down.
This seems great for the consumer in terms of what the service that was once certainly for pay, and in the case of long distance, was once very expensive. I can remember my dad getting mad at my mom, "Don't talk to your grandmother so long on the phone," because it was long distance. So in terms of the consumer, the price is going down a lot. So can you talk a little bit more about what is the revenue model? Advertising, how does that work in the voice context? In terms of pricing mechanisms, or are we talking sponsorships, and how intrusive is that to the consumer? I mean, is that a compelling product?
So I think we can talk about that because we have some experience because we're doing it. And so what we have not done is try to get in the way of the experience. So when a call comes in and you want to play a voicemail, you don't hear some audio ad that gets in the way of you quickly retrieving your voicemail. But when your call comes in and we provide the caller ID, there's room there to have a standard banner ad that you'd see on the web. When you go retrieve your voicemail, it's in an email telling you caller ID, there's room for a banner ad. There's a banner ad in the viewer that everybody uses all the time at AOL and AIM when they're reading their email. So we can monetize it through a number of different standard ad opportunities. We're deliberately starting slow, but we can get to the point where we can integrate video and other types of ads in a very compelling way that will not get in the way of the consumer.
It's also beneficial for the retailers. I mean, if you take a look at what Google's doing with click-to-call, 90% of advertisers today would much rather receive a phone call than a click on a web page. I mean, that's just generally the business. Now, if you can get a consumer to pick up the phone and actually call you, what are your chances of closing a sale versus that person clicking away from your page? So the advantages to the merchants that are advertising, they're able to attract more people that are helping monetize this type of service. It's beneficial to the retail community as well. So I mean, it helps build upon what's already out there.
So this is the trend, exactly the trend that we capitalized on at Ingenio. We pioneered something called pay-per-call, where we literally translate that call and sell it to the merchant in a bidding atmosphere in the same way that they bid for clicks today on Google or Yahoo. So the local merchants are saying, I will pay $14 for a call or $15 for a call, and that determines their placement on the page. And so, like you mentioned, the customer experience is not affected at all. You simply pick up your phone and dial a number. Unbeknownst to you, we are charging the merchant those $14 for that call to come through. So there's ways of doing the advertising. It's just a little more innovative than before.
And that's exactly the same lines of what we've been doing for a long time at Paltalk. We have a free model that is ad supported. While people are in this multi-user chat environment, down the side will be some contextually relevant advertisement. You have to categorize what the subject of your chat is so we can make that contextual relevance association. And then secondarily, if you don't want to have those ads, we have a premium service that you can pay and remove that.
And I think what Google has done is sort of inched along the spectrum of when an advertisement becomes less intrusive and more informational, and something that I would actually want. I don't see that as an intrusion, but I actually want to take a look at it. So if you extend the same metaphor to 411, which is a huge money churner for anyone who provides direct assistance with cell phone or local phone carriers, if you have the search if my search changes from looking for a specific restaurant in San Jose downtown to I want to find an Italian restaurant in San Jose downtown, or I don't even have to give my location because that's being transmitted. So there's such rich context with the information I'm seeking. If somebody says, "Oh, I'll give you three names, three possibilities, and you can do one click to call, direct to call, and make a reservation," or whatever, suddenly I may not see that as that intrusive because that's the information I'm seeking. And I don't care if those 3 slots have been sold by some provider at a particular price, because as long as the information is relevant to me, I don't mind. The call is free, so I'm saving money to make a call. So is this advertising or is this informational service? You know, the line is blurred.
We do the same thing. You can text 411 to our SMS address, and you'll get a phone call back. So this way, you don't. All cell carriers charge anywhere from $1.50 to $3.25 for each 411 call on your phone. So here, you just do an SMS message of 411, and all of a sudden, within 5 seconds, you have a phone call back on your phone connected to DA. And if you have a messaging plan included, you get 300 messages per month. I mean, it costs you nothing for DA at that point. It's an inbound call to you. So the advantages of using multimedia messaging, SMS messaging or the web, and starting to integrate all these different technologies for delivery platforms is really where this is all focusing at. Right. It's trying to combine all the various avenues. The way that we deliver content used to be just the TV. Then the internet came along, and then cell phones started to progress, and it'll continue to progress. There'll be newer devices. If you take a look at some of the new tablets that are coming out, and what they're developing, the real age of where we're heading towards in the next 5 years will be a multimedia. It's going to be everywhere. So.
You guys are already kind of touching on this, but I want to focus a little bit more on some of the unique aspects of voice over IP. One of the great things about the internet is its ability to mimic mediums that have come before. So, you don't have to read your newspaper on inky paper. You can read it on the web, and it's virtually the same experience in terms of the words on the page. The same, you can listen to the radio on the web. But the internet also extends all of these things in a really unique way. So in the same way that you can read the newspaper or listen to the radio, you can also follow links from that article to other related or referenced content. What are some of those unique applications for voice? We have a lot of service providers at this point that are offering just straight telephone service. Like with cable service or other kinds of content service. But what are some of these unique applications beyond that?
Snakes on a plane.
Why don't you tell us about Snakes on a Plane?
I don't know how many people are familiar with the new movie Snakes on a Plane. Okay. It's Samuel Jackson's the star. If you go to the website, MGM's promoting. Go to you see the ads on TV. Go to snakesonaplane.com. One of the options on the website is to actually build a customized message to send to somebody, and that can be sent via email, MMS, or any phone number. So you go through and say, my friend's name is whatever, my name is, he's A, and you fill in all these little boxes, and within about 40 seconds you press send, and then it goes off, and then we go out and we start off doing about 100,000 phone calls. I'd say the first week it came out. Yesterday they hit 700,000 phone calls. And that's phone calls, not just, they also send the emails and but just 700,000 phone calls, US based, for, somebody going to that website, generating a customized promotional message to go see Snakes on a Plane and send it to their friend or whoever. So you're going to find, the multimedia content delivery of how to market to folks is really, really taking effect now. They're opening this up international now, and they expect it to be doing over 2 million phone calls a day. So it's, how we can utilize this, from, you have a web address, which is just snakesonaplane.com, and then move it into something else that's more of a marketing aspect of it. So you've triggered now, not just a person who's seen the web page, but now they're also referring somebody else. So it's almost like, one friend told another friend told another friend, and it just keeps going on and on and on.
Real viral marketing.
There you go. It's almost like, the street teams. If you think of hip hop, they promote, they have street teams out on the street. It's more of a more internet-based type street team effect. So.
Are these actually calls, or are they messages?
Phone calls.
They're actual phone calls.
But basically, Samuel L. Jackson sat in a recording studio for God knows how long, put together a bunch of words. And through technology, we're able to build these customized messages, and it's also used for political marketing too. Come time for candidates running, all of a sudden you get a phone call from President Bush. At least it sounds like President Bush, and that's what you're listening to. So, or your senator, or whoever the case may be. So it's very customized to to vary any industry, but from an aspect of what's the net result in using the communication path. I mean, eventually you'll be able to get a multimedia message with pictures moving and voice to it. So, and you're more apt to look at that today because it's something new. I'm more apt to listen to a phone call. If Samuel L. Jackson's talking to me on my phone, I'm just a little more interested just to hear what's going on, and I'll listen to it and it'll play through. So instead of a telemarketer, that's one aspect.
I was one of those 70,000 yesterday who heard Samuel urge me to see Snooks on a plane.
Yeah, he does urge.
And I really do think that gets to the root of what you can do with VoIP. The key aspect is that you can also control. You can add value to the conversation. It's not just a simple phone call. You can stop it, you can start it, you can determine who can call and who can't call, and you can interrupt and add another person. All these things that used to be somewhat difficult, you can do quite seamlessly now. Think about how crude our normal telephones are today. You give out a phone number and anyone in the world can just ping you and ring your phone while you're sitting on a panel. Through a smartphone that really would be VoIP enabled, you can have buddy lists to determine exactly who can call you and exactly who can't call you. And you're taking a nap right now, so no one should be able to call you unless it's a real emergency, and I've given only my wife and sister emergency privileges. All the kinds of value on top of a simple phone call are things that will open up. At Ether, we take very precise control over who can call you and whether they pay to talk to you, and whether they pay to talk to you for a certain amount of time. And when that time is up, the call ends unless you pay more. Right? You really suddenly have these building blocks that you can assemble in any which way you want, as opposed to just having a conversation just take place.
Now, one other thing I just want to add, to get an idea of free calling, anybody can go to www.click4me.net. At that point, you get a username, you put in your phone numbers, how you want to be contacted. No longer do you have to give people your phone number. You can just give them that name. They can text that name to an address. They can go to a web address and say, I want to contact you, and all of a sudden you'll get a phone call first, seeing if you want to take the call. It'll tell you who it is, and this is all free. And it's it's landline or wireless line, with wired based. So it's all done through VoIP, but it's not dependent upon you having a messenger or you having some sort of client. So you're going to see how the world's going to change. Now, Click4Me will probably turn into some sort of advertising component or embodied into some other type of service, but it gives you an idea of where VoIP is being used as the medium in the middle, still using the outside of the network that exists today. And what you're going to find is that people are going to start to capitalize on all these. If you take AOL, you take Yahoo, take all these different aspects. Those eyeballs are marketing, and businesses want those people. What do people do most? They talk on their phones. So that they're going to use that method to reach you, and that's really why it's going to be free.
Frankly, I think there's so many applications that it's really hard to know where to begin. I think we're just starting to have a lot of the tools we really need to bring this to the masses and make it really applicable. Paltalk really concentrates on enabling communities, and frankly, I think that we're doing one piece of this. There's so many other pieces to enable multiple users to come together who have something in common and talk. Whether that's virtual meetings, whether that's distance learning, whether that's, frankly, all these different things that you can't imagine. You think of some of the things that are just getting going with some of the video game consoles. They're using voice over IP to allow these gamers to talk to each other. But there's so many other classes of games. Take casual gamers, who today aren't well connected to the other casual gamers. So you think of all of these independent communities, you're bringing people who have some kind of common interest together, all together, that frankly you couldn't do before. I can call somebody who I know their number, that's it. I can't say, I want to talk to someone else who's playing this game, who shares this interest, who has this hobby, all the different combinations. Frankly, it's hard to even fathom all.
So one of the most interesting things that we see that VoIP enables is the power of community, both the user community and the developer community. So we have a little feature in our service, just sort of a throwaway, that's turning out to be incredibly valuable. And what the feature is anybody, when a call comes in, can click a button that says, this call's unwanted, I'm reporting an unwanted call. After a while, as the user community starts reporting the same numbers, sorry DirecTV, you start seeing that some of these numbers are just, nobody wants them. And so then we can actually indicate that in the call alert that shows you there's a call coming, and you know what, the community didn't like this. You don't have to risk picking up the phone. The community's advised you there may be a problem here. And so that's the user community actually doing something cool. And actually, as your community gets larger and larger and more calls are unwanted, you actually are building up this very useful database that we at AOL want to share with other companies that are doing VoIP services so they can find out what numbers might be unwanted and put them out there for their users. So that's the user community doing something I don't think you can do in a non-VoIP world. The other thing is the developer community. You know, we put this out and we've started to see some applications flow back to us. One of the cool things people have done is caller ID on steroids. The phone number comes in on the incoming call. They do a reverse lookup, find the address, you know, something that we might not have been able to do. They provide a tab in Firefox with a bunch of Googled information on the person. They pop up Zillow so you know how much their house was worth and where it is. And you know, it's kind of a silly little app, but it's starting to show the power of letting developers just play around and match things up to where you suddenly have this very useful amount of, at least somewhat useful amount of information on the caller. You'd never be able to do that in a non-VoIP world.
What are some of the challenges that you've encountered, I guess, with Michael and Alex?
And you too, Sean, for these things that have actually been implemented. I mean, it's new technology, these are new services. What was the big screw up, that you had to make it through?
Interoperability and quality. Yeah, it's almost like the days of dial-up modems. I mean, you guys are the king of that, but
we were the king of that.
Yeah, back in 1990, 98, when everybody wanted to be an ISP, so everybody in their garage they had a bank of modems. Quality fell through the floor, and then that's what made the AOLs of the world rise up. It was a quality perspective. You see that today in VoIP. Just because somebody says, hey, I support a SIP device, or I have this, unfortunately, the engineering community is responsible for bringing us this far, but they're also the same people who each have different views. So when you're talking about, in a network, what Lucent does versus what Nortel does versus what Sonos does versus what Cisco does, they all read from the same spec, but the interpretation is just a little bit different. So sometimes the calls drop in 2 minutes because a session timer wasn't right, or there's many aspects, and it gives VoIP a bad name. Secondly, if you're running this out of your garage, you probably have a low bandwidth connection, and if people are different codecs, different kinds of calls, you're going to have bad quality. So while some carriers are providing transport their own networks and doing what they need to do to give you a quality feel, there are people out there that are in the middle or using the internet as a transport mechanism. And the internet is not built for voice transport. You can't control how that one packet's going to move from San Jose to Newark, New Jersey. You just can't. So, let alone in your house. Your daughter or son could be upstairs watching a movie, and it's going to affect your call. So, the biggest issues we see today are quality and interoperability all through the network, because everybody's different. Everybody does something different version of code. Even Cisco running version 3.0 to 3.1, totally different. They don't work together, on different devices. So that's really what we see. VoIP is great. There's a lot of things that can be done with it, but as the engineers move forward, they're always continuously changing things. So you have to be aware of that as well.
Yeah, we see a lot of that too. I think it's unlike a lot of stuff that was sort of born on the internet. With voice, people have an expected behavior, and there was an expected quality that from prior experiences. I still hear a lot that when was the last time you picked up your landline and didn't hear a dial tone? And I think the people, as we're bringing the internet to voice, we're also bringing voice to the internet and sort of growing the internet in the process to handle that, as exactly as Sean was saying. So we are also seeing a lot that people are still saying, well, I'm still going to pay for having that conference call and pay WebEx and all these companies, or even third-party companies like Sprint, expensive conference hosting fees instead of doing that on Skype or any of this born on the internet services, because the quality is not good. What if my call gets dropped? It's a really important sales call, whatever. So I think the challenge still is the quality and people's expectation of what a good, reliable voice quality should be.
I think we've had two challenges. One is at the interaction of where what we're doing meets the real world. So we have 43 million screen names, and that means, where do you get 43 million telephone numbers? Yeah. And so, we've launched the service and trying to keep up and get people, we want to give them local numbers. If you're in Palo Alto, we'd like to give you a Palo Alto number, not a Reno number. That's a real challenge to actually keep up and get the numbers that we need. What's that?
Come talk to me.
I will. The second real challenge is the expectations consumers have. So with our service, it works as free voicemail. You sign up, boom, you give the number out, voicemail shows up in your inbox. Pretty simple. Well, now you click to play the voicemail. What media player do you have on your machine, and how long does it take up? If you've got iTunes as your default, suddenly iTunes is coming up, and there's an MP3 with a long name. Okay, well, how much of the world do we want to actually merge into our product versus leveraging what's there? And we find a lot of stuff that we thought wasn't a big deal, like, oh, you just have to download this version of AIM and you can answer calls online. That's a big leap for people. So I think there's a challenge in what are consumers willing to do and how much control can you have over their experience and how much investment do you want to do to have that control.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll throw in a couple of things. I want to reemphasize what those guys said earlier in terms of history and quality. I think we've spent a number of years, even some of the early adopters got burned using dial-up services and voice over IP. I think we're still kind of climbing out of the days of those expectations of voice over IP is a bad service level. Secondarily, for consumers, I think that there's a lot of confusion in the market. Is voice over IP simply something that makes my phone line magically cheaper? Is it something that gives me Samuel Jackson Snakes on a Plane? There's so many people talking about voice over IP. Consumers don't know what the heck it is, and they're continually getting messaged. And suddenly you start throwing out things like, well, my phone can be free. They're really excited, but they don't know what to expect. And so we have to be really careful in terms of how we address the market overall. And then in terms of Paltalk specifically in our history, we bring lots of people together. Everybody has a voice. However, not everybody has a willing ear. And so suddenly you've got this disconnect on how do you manage that? You want to enable all these people to talk, but you also want to give the controls there, some of which Alex was talking about earlier in terms of the community building a database, identifying who can talk under what controls, and there needs to be a whole set of infrastructure there that's really still developing in terms of who can talk, what are the constraints, and how do you grade those different styles of communication.
Scott, did you want to add anything to that one?
No, we haven't had any issues.
Oh,
no.
In that case, I have another question for
Okay.
you. I'm really intrigued by how you've been talking about monetizing community, and I guess the thing that's popping into my mind, we've talked about our flat rate pricing for just standard calls and advertise-based models. And it kind of seemed like some of the stuff you were talking about was fee-based services. And I'm wondering, how much can any one person spend, like for this type of service? What kind of average monthly spending are we looking at, or is realistic to expect, do you think? And how does that break out? How do you guys think about that?
Well, it's as varied as the services economy, and it's interesting, in the offline world, the services economy is bigger than the goods economy. And looking online, we have this tremendous trading of goods, but very few services. And our view on that is that the reason is that it's just more complex to sell services. You've got to talk at the same time, and you've got to do billing, and you've got to do billing in accordance with the time spent spoken. So once you figure all those moving parts, then the different price points are as varied as the services economy. We see price points for computer help that are very sort of short and sweet, people talking for, $50 for a half an hour. We see therapists talking for a full hour. We see someone like Samuel Jackson or I guess a less heavy celebrity. People do celebrity calls of 3 minutes. So small calls, big calls, it's really everything under the sun. Just like eBay has an incredible varied a number of goods and price points, we're going to see that same blossoming in the services side.
So you wouldn't say that you've seen kind of an 80-20 rule going on as far as 80% of the traffic towards this 20% of type of use, or?
It's more of there's definitely a long tail there. There's a lot of variation. Sort of down the middle, I think, is about a sort of $15 or $20 call.
Did anybody else want to comment on that in terms of price points and monthly spending type issues on the consumer side?
Well, I think one interesting thing we're seeing is the volume of traffic that starts showing up on these numbers. You know, we've pitched our free numbers as stop getting calls on your home and cell you don't want. So anytime you're interacting with somebody who asks you for your phone number, which happens a ton, you give them this phone number. And what we find is over time, people are getting more calls on these phone numbers than they're getting on their regular phone. They talk longer on their phone, but they're getting tons of voicemails and short messages and stuff here. So we're actually finding we're building a significant volume of traffic. You know, each monetized with a very small amount, but as you start spreading it over a large base, it adds up to a large number. And I think that was a surprise to some of us because we weren't sure just how often people don't want to give out a number, but have had to in the past. And it turns out it's a lot.
Interesting. Well, we have a few minutes left still, so I was going to go ahead and open up to some audience questions. Are there some audience questions? Go ahead.
I just had a comment. It seems like, voices in the overall ecosystem of this data, where digital media, television, all that stuff is happening, is going to have a rough time, evolving from the importance it had, say, 10 years ago. Voice is struggling. Other than integration, both products got great applications in AOL. But what I'm saying is, I suppose that voice needs to reinvent itself in the way it exists in the data environment.
The delivery method does.
And I would say, I'll give an example. It's not the best example, but I would say that, for instance, companies like Telme, they were trying to use speech recognition to get pointed information from web, where you have tons of information available that voice would actually narrow down to 2 or 3 that could be used, Because unless voice reinvents itself, it will continue to be, okay, I could integrate, I could do click to talk, I could do some of those stuff, but it's not mainstream. And voice needs to find a way to get to that mainstream if it has to thrive, not just survive.
I think it's ease of delivery. Currently today, sitting in front of your TV is the easiest method of delivery of any kind of content. It's a picture. We're all accustomed to it. How would you ask TV to reinvent itself? So the phone is in the same scenario. Cell phones have come a long way. So it's really what are we going to be able to adapt to for our media delivery system. And it's not just phone, it's going to be video or whatever content. It could be coupons, it could be my newspaper ad. When I go to the store, I might be able to just shoot out my coupon. Whatever that device is going to be. Today they look like phones or PDAs or whatever the case may be. This is going to evolve over a number of years as technology gets better, as content delivery systems get better. And it's not just going to be voice that's going to be reinvented. It's going to be all methods of communication or delivery systems for whatever it may be, any kind of multimedia aspect, whether it's a TV commercial. Maybe I'm going to be walking through Target one day, and just because my profile is stored someplace, all of a sudden I get a beep on my phone of a free coupon inside Target for 10% because of location-based services. But this is what you're going to see evolving. It's almost like Big Brother, happening, but for voice, video, and some of the other services. Today I walk around with 2 cell phones. I've got a laptop upstairs. I mean, how many different devices are we going to use to communicate when we can all get that into something a little more simpler? And I don't know what that device is yet. If I did, I wouldn't be sitting here. But the point, we just need to find out what that device is going to be over time, and there you'll find voice converged and email converged and all the other data that you want. It'll be easy to use, and that's where it's really going to be targeted.
And I have a slightly different view. I think what voice is going to do is, it's hard for us to realize or believe in Silicon Valley that there's lots of people in the world who don't find the internet relevant. They either not use it, or it's not really something as part of their daily life. And a lot of that is language, computers, difficulty using computers, access to computers, variety of reasons. I think what voice is capable of doing that in the long run is bring in an entire set of new people onto the data world, as voice, with voice being their only channel of communication in and out of this system. I'll give you a couple of years ago, right after I started using Skype, I had forgotten to change the setting from anyone can call me. That's the default setting. I got a call from somebody in India, and seemed like a spam, and I didn't accept the call. I got a text message that I'm trying to learn English. Can you help me? And turned out there was a teenager in south of India who, because Skype is free, is religiously going to an internet cafe, finding people in the US who can speak English just to have a conversation with me. That was 2 years ago. I gave a talk on the eBay Developers Conference a couple of months ago. There's 3 companies who are offering tutoring entirely on Skype. And their biggest problem was, in the old telephony world, it was more expensive to deliver the services than the cost of the service. I mean, they could offer the tutoring service at a couple of dollars an hour. These guys are sitting in India. And high school math, programming services, tech support, they can do college homework at computer science students out here for a couple of dollars. But originally, the call itself cost $10 because of long distance internet. With Skype, they're having a thriving business. So I think, and a lot of them, similarly, you can extend to those who don't speak English. Skype, they can have a perfectly valid, they are using the internet. They're part of our data world. You look at podcasting, what's that doing? I mean, I think of podcasting as a perfectly valid VoIP exploit, because it's, it doesn't get mentioned in the same light as user-generated content in VoIP, but it is. Suddenly, we see all these bloggers doing quite well with database, text-based blogging. But what if I don't speak English, but I have an audience? I can speak Chinese, and with VoIP, find my own audience. And so I think what I believe VoIP is going to do is sort of bring an entirely new set of commerce and community into the internet that, as we know it, that is not there right now.
So thinking about your question, I do see how one can look at it as if voice is struggling out there and has to reinvent itself. But I don't really think there's much drama there, because I think it's inevitable that voice will win in the end. It's just all too human, all too normal for us to communicate this way. If you read John Patel's book on search, he and everyone at Google, really know that the end game is a search engine that's sort of like the Star Trek character Data, where you just ask something and it tells you back. So voice will win in the end. I think it is a matter of how we make it work. You brought up 555-TEL from back in 1999. I think that will win too, some form of that. I think that was just an example of something that was too early. It also didn't have an ad model to support it, so they just ran all these minutes, and you talk about, give me a Chinese restaurant near me and what are the movie times, but no way to monetize it. It was not unlike all the websites we saw back then, before Overture invented pay-per-performance advertising on the web. So it was too early, no ad model, and it eventually went out. I do believe we're going to see a whole new generation of voice portals where you're asking all kinds of questions, getting all kinds of directions, and now we do have the ad models to support it. And in the same way that we saw, old sites like eHow went out of business, now it's back because there's Overture. Well, there's Google AdSense, right? I think we're going to see a resurgence in voice portals because we do have pay-per-call advertising. We have pay-per-minute monetization. I think you're going to see a resurgence in it.
Any more?
Yeah, just one comment. I think the key, voice as a business that's standalone, I think we're all agreeing, tends to be moving toward going away. But voice as a tool for solving a problem, I think, is a huge opportunity, and we've heard a bunch of stuff. Our whole service came out of the notion of a couple of people we knew saying, I really am tired of getting calls at 9:30 at night waking up my baby. Well, how could we solve that problem? Well, if I just had another number. Well, you gotta go to the phone company, it's $30. Now it's free. Gee, I have a number for my business now, I have a number for people I meet, I get 5 numbers. And so suddenly phone numbers have become a commodity. And it allows people to do all sorts of really neat stuff. So I think we're all actually agreeing it's about, what problems are you solving for consumers with a service, with voice, and the fact that voice is moving to free as a key component.
More questions?
I have one.
You have one more? Okay.
Scott, how do you integrate VoIP with, you said, blogs and,
Sure. Well, I can show you an example of it. Here's a blog. This is Pete Cashmore's Mashable blog, and here he's integrated Ether to sell what he says. So he's offering Web 2.0 consulting, and he's upgrading his blog from a reading experience to a live one-on-one phone conversation in which he's charging, I think it's $150 an hour. So he has a button that people can call to talk to him. In the background, he has configured this button to charge for his time. Through Ether, you can sort of mete out your intellectual capital through time exactly as you'd like. So $50 for 30 minutes, and then thereafter end the call or charge another block of time. It's really time that we're enabling you to sell. And so he's done this, and then he routes it to whatever phone he wants, whether it be a VoIP phone or normal phone, and we give you a phone number and a button you can put on your site just as he has. So that's how it works.
More questions from the audience?
I have a question about the Skype back to VoIP in the US. The Skype back to the VoIP service in the US would be free voice to the end of the year. Let's go.
Can you repeat that? I'm not sure I got it.
So what is the comment for about the Skype offering free voice calling in the US, in the United States and Canada?
Skype offering free calls in the US?
To the end of the year. Yeah, to the end of the year. I mean, it's marketing at this point. I mean, it's like anything else. I mean, the more subscribers that you can have, the more valuable they become. The more eyeballs that you have, all within these communities that people build, the more valuable that community is to now go out and market, advertising, or whatever the case may be, to other potential people to market to these folks. So, again, they're commoditizing it. They're not losing money on it. That's for sure. A phone, honestly, folks, a phone call today is no more than 0.7 of a cent per minute. I mean, that's the wholesale cost of a phone call. So if you take a look at what the actual cost is, and it's lower. New York is like 0.3 or 0.2 of a cent to put a call there. So the cost basis in a wholesale environment is extremely low. So commoditizing this is extremely easy. The cost basis. Phone numbers are free. I mean, that's the reality. Currently today, if I was to give him phone numbers, actually Verizon or else would have to pay me money for every phone call that I would give to him. So I would still make money, and he would pay me nothing, but Verizon would be paying me everything. So, in this world where the economics still sit that way, the more VoIP carriers that come into play, where traffic can be exchanged strictly across the internet, like Skype, that's where there's no charge, because there's no tariff guy in the middle saying, hey, pay the toll. And that's really what you're avoiding through VoIP.
And it's interesting. I think a year ago, if you look at Skype's penetration worldwide, we work quite closely with them. US had disproportionately low penetration. So if you look at the broadband users worldwide, Skype Skype should have, for a service that's over 60, 70 million users at the time, should have about the same penetration of broadband users. But US, because calls, as he said, were so cheap, people everywhere else in the world, local calls are still metered. So you would latch out, what he has. So they needed to increase US market share. That was one tactic, exactly, marketing. But more than that, more insightful is that it actually increased purchase of Skype in numbers in the US after they did that. Because suddenly the case is really compelling for me to give up my landline. Before that happened, my choices were get my landline from my local phone company or Vonage for most people. And we actually, because we sell adapters that let you use your regular phone with Skype, we actually saw a similar pattern and similar uptake in selling. So suddenly the combination of a cheap adapter, a Skype in number that's $30 a year, and free long distance anywhere in the US, you have essentially replicated your phone service, which would cost you, $15+ from your phone service plus the long distance charge, $25 for Vonage a month again, or $30 a year. And I think, so actually Skype, exactly what I said, actually ended up making more money because more people bought Skype in service as a result of this promotion.
Skype is getting the local phone.
Skype in is me getting a local number that you call me and my Skype rings. And that comes with voicemail, so it takes away the presence issue of you having to be online and all that business. So.
But I think the impact of the VoIP and the wireless we are, with the cell phone, we are very good. Just see me next week.
Motorola's doing it now. BlackBerry has some models. You can go overseas and actually do this. You know, the U.S. is always 3 steps behind when it comes to cellular. Yep. Yeah, I can do VoIP on that, but your standard phone, if you go overseas today, when you walk into your office, if you have a Wi-Fi connection in your office, your phone will switch over. You can get this service today. China is actually the most advanced. UT Starcom has deployed it almost all across China, where you have what they're calling, basically tri, and you go through, and it's non-existent. Wherever, as soon as you hit a Wi-Fi spot, if the signal's strong enough, you switch over to the Wi-Fi, rather than on cellular. So it's going to come. The problem is technology moves in 18 months. What I said is a window called 18 months. Every 18 months, there's a shift in technology. So once everybody says, okay, I'm going to do this, take a look at, what Singular did with their, broadband. They were the best for a little while with their GPRS. Well, all of a sudden, then you start seeing Verizon with the EVDO. Now you see, AT&T's rolling out, some new services that are, 10 meg services to cell phone. The problem is technology has to slow down at some point. It never will, but it needs to give everybody else the comfort of jumping in and being able to make the money back on the capital that's going to be spent. So.
Sorry, just one comment. We were in discussion with a major service provider in the US who is operating both DSL and mobile. The mobile happens to be, they pay per minute at the back off. They would like nothing more for us to make a phone for them that switches to Wi-Fi when the consumer's in their home. So they get billed for the minute. They can bill the consumer for the minute. If you bought 300 minutes or 500, whatever your mobile package is, but doesn't cost the backhaul. Because now those minutes are routed over the free Wi-Fi versus over the TDMA network, in which case they have to pay at the backhaul. So we had a meeting 2 weeks ago. They said, we want this next month if you can deliver it to us. So it's going to happen.
I do think you brought up an important event with Skype having to charge nothing in North America because they didn't do so because they wanted to. They did so because they had to. They needed to drive usage here. And I think that underscores the point that we've been making here all session, which is that you're in trouble if you just offer free connectivity, right? The whole world can talk for free is an amazing proposition, and 100 million Skype users proves that. But it's really for the international calls. And in the U.S., whether we have cell phone packages or Vonage or whatever you use, that wasn't enough to drive enough usage. So I think it's really case in point that you've got to innovate and build these kinds of applications to draw usage, because just plain connectivity won't do it.
So cell phone companies make more money off of downloading content, for ringtones, and it's the truth that the cost of operating a network is quite expensive for them, but the cost of putting up a single ringtone and then having millions of people download it, that's the money for them. So. A good what? Mm-hmm.
I think we're about out of time, so if anybody has further questions, I encourage you to approach our panelists. And thank you all for attending. Thank you, panelists, for the great discussion.